Johnson, who stood up to her professor who didn't want to hear about the Native American genocide. So all day we'll be talking about the G word, genocide, and there's lots of forms of that, and it all started in 1492. That's when our race war started, and that's when our slavery started, Columbus. All right, I want to make a few remarks. First, that we have a movement here. The students have strength, and maybe the faculty is a bunch of scared bunny rabbits that won't speak up to the administration, but you students have the power. So I want to talk a little bit briefly about the history of student power and student movements and put this into perspective. Then I want to talk about the importance and the significance of Chitaniva Johnson, who stood up to her professor and dared to contradict him.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, you've got a movement. I want to go back a little bit. There's always been students in rebellion, and for good reason. But we got to think back to the 1930s. And this is brief. I won't bore you. But the youth of that time were standing up to the President of the United States and getting the First Lady to come to their defense to stop racial discrimination in jobs for youth. So they made a difference, and many laws and executive proclamations were passed to stop discrimination in jobs. Fast forward, 1960, we got a lot of movements happening. If you think about Birmingham, Alabama, you might not know this history, but you know the picture of it. Students, young people out there fighting racial discrimination, and they are attacked by the chief of police, Bull Connor. He sends his police dogs out there, and they have fire hoses on the students. And that makes international news. And it is the tipping point in the desegregation of the United States. So students have power. Well, 1964, students, college students are involved, and they are putting on Freedom Summer in Mississippi. Up here at UC Berkeley, they start the free speech movement. I think we need a free speech movement here. It might be the kernel that's starting, the seed starting here. The free speech movement was not about dirty words. I think that's what you learned from the hearsay of the conservatives. It was about leafleting and pamphleting for the civil rights movement. The president of the university, the dean, sent down police to stop this leafleting and dissemination of information about the civil rights movement. Now, these students were veterans of Freedom Summer and all the civil disobedience movements that were going on at the time to change this race war that's been going on since 1492, still going on, and going on in this university in a different way, called bureaucratic genocide. I'll talk about that in a minute. But anyway, the students wouldn't leave. And there was one police car there. And other students came to the defense of the students who were standing up to the police. And 3,000 students surrounded that police car. and they didn't leave for a couple of days. And it started civil rights, black power discussions on campuses, and it did a lot of other things. It made people think that we have the power, and you do have the power as students. Now you're up against bureaucratic genocide. What's that? Well, that's when they talk you to death. They don't use a gun. They just use papers, memos, committee meetings, and the cold shoulder, and they freeze you out. You go to the president of the university, and he gives you a handshake and ushers you out the door. And you think you don't have any power. But I want to tell you about a student movement that happened here in 2011. Students took over the administration building. It was about the student fees that are way too high and putting students in debt. So students have power. So there are many, many other movements, the anti-war movement that happened on college campuses. 1980s, I remember divesting in apartheid, South Africa. It happened. Students were making history. 1990, you might not think this, but there wasn't a Chicano studies program at UCLA, which is probably the Chicano capital of the United States. But there wasn't one at UCLA, and thousands of students camped out in the quad, and for a week, they brought attention to the problems of the university. The problem is they do not listen to students. They listen to their money managers. And so you students are treated like cash cows to fill places in a classroom, and I'm sorry, the faculty sometimes buys into that. This is your university. Make it what you want. This is a public university. It was made for you.